blessings.
I'm Amber of amberandamethyst.com. I am a physical medium, I am a Reiki master, and I specialize in doing spirit communication, talking to spirit guides, animal totems, and past lives.
And I am Sara Como of Spiritual Tides, and I am a psychic medium and animal communicator, as well as I dabble in Reiki because of her, and angel discovery and past life regression as well. So that actually brings us to what we're talking about today, which is the best topic ever.
Past lives! Past lives! Oh my gosh. It blows my mind that so many of the fundamental religions like Christianity and Judaism don't agree with past lives. But a lot of the Eastern religions like Hinduism and stuff, they're more into that. So
it's so hard to ignore though. How do you explain things about yourself without diving into what a past life that you had? And it's amazing what you can find out by learning about your past lives. So
what are past lives?
What are past lives?
Define past lives.
So past lives are your soul had another journey in another lifetime. Now, there's a lot of theories about how this goes. There's theories of, mixing timelines and things like that. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about just things that go back in time. Have you, thought about, let's just go with Egypt for just as an example right now. Egypt. Do you feel strong connections to Egypt? I do. So as an example, many thousands of years ago, I lived in Egypt. So my soul was born a long time ago. My soul was born, so it started to journey through all these past lives, or all these lives in chronological order to get to where I am today. Now, the reason why we're not supposed to remember all of our past lives and that we're only allowed little tidbits of them is because we're meant to learn lessons in this lifetime. And if we remembered lessons and blessings.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And so with each life, let's say we collected all that information, we kept it all in our brain, we would go crazy. What lessons would we learn if we kept all that information in our head? It makes no sense to do that because with each life, you're meant to learn different lessons. I want to keep saying lessons.
Lessons and blessings. Lessons and blessings.
Yeah. Lessons and blessings. So, past lives are so fun to dive into. Like I said, you only learn little tidbits of information, the things you need to hear. Now, why do we want to learn about it? What's so fascinating about past lives to you, Amber?
Well, the fact that when we die, we reincarnate into another human or celestial being or an animal. So before that happens though, when we die, we go up to heaven or the celestial area, wherever it is that you believe we go, but it's some, spiritual plane. And we meet with all of our angel guides that we've had, anybody that we ever interacted with, and we go over all of the lessons that we had learned in that lifetime. And then we make with them a plan for our next lifetime of what other lessons do we need to learn, what lessons didn't we learn in the last lifetime that we need to repeat. And everything that we're going through now is what our soul had determined for us to go through before, because this is what we need to do. But then once we get back down here, we're like, I don't remember any of that. Right?
It's frustrating.
So then it's like, well, I'm having such a struggle learning this lesson, and you keep repeating the same mistakes over and over because you don't remember, the lessons that you're supposed to learn. And we still have to go through all of them in this lifetime, but there's a specific goal to achieve, eventually when we die. And to get to that point, it's a struggle, isn't it? Like, we struggle every day just to get through these certain hoops that we always have to jump through. And it's all planned out, really. We still have our own free will to deal with, and that's a whole nother discussion of free will, but we can make all these choices, but in the end it's to get to the lessons that we need to learn. So even though we feel like either we're guided in this direction or screw it, I'm just going to improvise and go this direction, in the end it's all going to lead to you still learning the patience or the confidence that your soul said that you needed to learn, any kind of emotion, physical state, discipline, things like that, is all stuff that our soul needs to learn before we can ultimately be a solely spiritual being and be a guide for somebody else. So I just find everything about past lives fascinating.
It's so fascinating.
How do I know that what I'm experiencing is from a past life?
Yeah, because you can, a lot of things can be obviously from this life, and you don't want to just assume that everything that is going wrong with you or everything that you love is because of a past life. It's not necessarily true. But however I describe this to people, I always say that it has to do with, let's talk about fears and worries. Irrational fears and worries are what is stemmed from a past life. Now, when I say irrational, I mean you are so deathly afraid of being in a fiery car crash, but you've never had that. You've never had that in your life, in this current lifetime. But why do you fear it? There's no reason to fear it, so that makes it irrational. You have no reason that it's not that something happened now that you are afraid of. So something like that would have happened in a past life, and because it was so traumatic and it was basically it stained your soul. The contract with your soul. It was unfulfilled. It was unfinished business, especially if it results in a death, a tragic death. You're going to carry that with you, with every life, subsequent life after that, until you heal from it. So it's all about learning your lessons and healing, and that's why we're able to get these little glimpses of past lives.
Another good example is people who were orphaned in past lives often have a very unhealthy sense of independence, because if they didn't take care of it, nobody else would. I mean, they had to be independent of themselves. They couldn't rely on anybody. They couldn't trust anybody. So having these certain tendencies is an indication of some past life trauma or karma that you carry over into this lifetime of unlearned lessons or unfinished business kinds of things. One thing that I deal with personally, and we're going to talk a lot of story time on my past lives on this, I feel like.
Story time is good.
Yes, but I've spent the majority of my past lives as a man. Yes. But things that go along with that, and we're going to get really personal here, are infertility issues, because our soul just can't handle that, and our soul's having a hard time running our bodies the way that it should run. Also, acting like a woman. All my friends are men, pretty much. I mean, you're one of the only girlfriends that I have. But I always gravitated. I was always a tomboy growing up.
So was I.
I've just always had that male mental mentality. But I've been a man in a lot of my past lives. Other things that you might experience, some physical things. So we're going to dive into my Native American past lifetime, which was in the mid-1800s. I was actually a warrior who fought alongside with Crazy Horse. I've always had a huge pull towards the Native American culture, especially like the Lakota Sioux. I've had this really obsessive fascination with Crazy Horse himself. So in doing some of these past life regressions, I discovered and had all these amazing visions of actually being a warrior and riding alongside Crazy Horse. But before that, for years and years and years, I'd had tension headaches, and I still get them to this day, to where the neck muscles in my body are just so tight always, and in my shoulders and up into my head. And I have always had this pain. And just walking under things, I work in a factory, and there's all this overhead piping, and I just always have to duck, like I'm afraid something's gonna burst and hit me in the head. I'm so afraid of head trauma. Well, find out in this past life regression that I was actually killed by blunt force trauma to the back of my head. Well, reading up on all these other things I had known about, birthmarks can be an indication of a place where you were killed in a past life. So if you have a birthmark in your leg, you might have been shot in the leg and died from blood loss or something. Or
Or it might have had a significant effect on your
Yeah.
lifetime, specifically.
So that's what birthmarks can mean a lot of the times. Well, post past life regression, post knowing about all of these tension headaches, last year I got a haircut. It used to actually be down to my waist, but I got it chopped off really short and I got an undercut. So basically the backside of my head was shaved. I have a rather large red stained birthmark on the back of my head, exactly where I get those tension headaches. I had no idea about this.
Wow.
But I had found that out, and then I
So
couldn't
you
show
didn't know
up.
about that until last year?
I had no idea. And I was so disappointed because then I didn't take any pictures of my undercut. I didn't have any footage of that. I was like, oh God, that looks so bad because it's a rather large red, very red birthmark on the back of my head. So I don't have any pictures of my undercut thanks to my past life. But that's just an example of all of those things in culmination, you know, actual physical markers of past life trauma, mental obsessions, being obsessed with Crazy Horse in that whole time period, and having irrational fears of having things overhead and something hitting me in the head. I mean, all that stuff manifested into this past lifetime, manifesting in this lifetime. Still figuring out what all those lessons mean, and I'm really trying to learn them fast so that I don't have to keep channeling that lifetime, because that fear is pretty irrational. Just randomly getting hit in the head with a pipe.
Yeah, it is. It's super irrational and it's uncomfortable. You know, nobody wants to go around and constantly have a fear like that. And that's what a past life regression does for you. It gives you a glimpse into that lifetime and what you need to do with that information. First of all, acknowledging that that's where that pain comes from, or that spot, or the behavior, whatever that is, that's the lifetime is what is the root of the issue. And so when you acknowledge that and know, okay, so next time Amber sits and thinks, oh my God, I'm gonna get hit in the head. No, she's gonna sit and think, no, this is not my present fear. It's based on a past life. So I'm just gonna let it go. That fear means nothing to me right now because it's not real. Now, like I said earlier, you know, if you have a fear of being hit in the head because you actually were in this lifetime, I get that. That is a totally legitimate fear. That's rational.
More or less, unless it's obsessively irrational, rational.
You don't want to walk around with fear anyway, but
right.
So going on the obsession route, I love Egypt. I was obsessed with the Titanic. I mean, literally everything about Titanic. I read books, I watched movies, I listened to soundtracks, I did all kinds of research. And of course, that was when I discovered that past life regressions were a thing, I went right to the Titanic. And that was definitely a lifetime that I had. And I will tell you that one of the lessons that I've learned from that lifetime, because I did go down with the ship, I love being by the ocean, but I do not like getting in it. And I never really understood that because it's so peaceful and I really love it. And I always picture the ocean at night. Remember, we were doing a meditation today and I always see the ocean at nighttime. Well, the Titanic went down at night, right? So, yeah, that's interesting, right? So, but there's lots of little things, lots of little lessons you can pick out of there. Like that lifetime, I was also a worrier. You know, I carried stress with me. And I was a young male in that lifetime. And the relationship I had with my parents, you know, I left them in England to come to America to be a teacher. And I never made it there. Well, I had, you know, a strained relationship with my parents. And those same parents in my Titanic lifetime are now my current parents in this lifetime. So I am learning lessons about them as well. And it's just so fascinating. Little things that you can pick up explains why you act the way you do, the relationships you have. Like, have you ever wondered why you have such a hard relationship with a parent or a grandparent or a sibling? You know, past lives can show you a lot about that. And we repeat these lessons until we learn it in different ways, of course, but specifically with just random things. But like if you're supposed to, you know, fulfill a contract, a soul contract with a particular person, you will meet that person as their soul, you know, in this lifetime or others until it gets resolved.
So how do we go about getting a past life regression done? Well, you can hop on amberandamethyst.com or spiritualtides.com. We actually do that via distance. You can get an email or recording. But there's a few ways that we do them. So one of our favorites to do is oracle cards. And we'll do a whole nother video segment on oracle cards explaining exactly what they are. But this particular deck pertains to past lives, and it gives us very specific information about past lives. So we'll draw the cards, we'll do the reading, we'll tap into your energy, whatever you allow us to read of your own energy. And again, we can do this all over the world from anywhere. And if you're into oracle cards, I would highly suggest this deck if you want to do your own past life regressions. But great deck by Doreen Virtue. Most of my card decks are from her.
Yes. And Brian Weiss is also part of that. And Brian Weiss is very, very big in the past life world. He was a psychiatrist, and he had a client that came in, and he specialized in hypnosis, which is another way to get a past life regression done. Make sure you go to a trained hypnosis for that. But he had a client that came in, and all of a sudden she started going into past lives, and he had no idea what was happening, but then started to dive more into it, and her lessons were helping her, but she didn't remember anything. You mentioned that sometimes you don't remember in hypnosis. But anyway, Brian Weiss, he's awesome. He's a great guide. He's got a lot of books out there. Same bodies, many bodies, many souls. We'll flash it up. I'm probably butchering that, but anyway, that's one of my favorite books. That's his first book, and you should read it if you're interested in past life.
And last and definitely not least is the prophet himself, Edgar Cayce. Almost all of his work, outside of actually doing a physical healing diagnosis of somebody, was done with past life work. So I have just the book about all of the readings that he did that took place in Atlantis. So this whole book is just lifetimes that different clients have lived in Atlantis, and explaining kind of the environment there based on what was said in those readings. So he was actually nicknamed the Sleeping Prophet, but I highly recommend, if you're getting into past lives and want to learn more about them, anything that Edgar Cayce did was absolutely stellar. Some really great stuff done through hypnosis as well, past life regressions with hypnosis.
And the way that I do past life regressions for my business is I actually utilize the crystal ruby and zysite, right? It's a big green chunk of rock, and it has little pink crystals in it. And anyway, so I placed my hand on it, the non-dominant hand, which receives the energy, correct? And so I use that. I even have a crystal necklace that I wear. And I do a bit of meditation, and you can check out our meditation video that we've posted also if you want to learn more about that. But that's how I do it. I kind of focus on the person, the client that I'm working with, and if there's specific questions, like if you want to talk about Egypt in particular, because you're just so fascinated by that and you want to know what happened, or if there's an irrational fear you want to discuss, you want to get rid of that. So I sit down, I'm working with the crystals, and I meditate, and I start getting visions. I sometimes draw those visions, but I also write down what I see word for word and relay that to you. So then you are able to see and hear exactly what's going on. Lessons come in, messages come in as well from your loved ones, your guardian angels. They also pop in there during your past life regression for me when I do it, and I relay that to you too. So it's a really great way to learn how everything kind of fits in with you and your soul, and it's just so fascinating. It's so fascinating. So think about what if there's a place in the world that you really, really want to visit, you've never been, but you just love it, you just can't explain it. Or on the flip side, some place that you've never been, but you really don't want to go. I mean, that can mean you didn't have a very pleasant lifetime there, or it's something very bad happened. So think those past lives can leave very big impacts on our souls. It can be positive, but it can also be very negative, and those negative things are what we carry on to our current lives. And until we heal from that, we are doomed, for lack of a better word, doomed to repeat it over and over again. So when I was told, you know, you're going to either fix it in this life or you're going to keep repeating it, I don't want to do that to my soul. That's not good. I mean, do you want to keep doing that to yourself? No. So I'm going to learn these lessons as best as I can.
Lessons and blessings.
Lessons and blessings.
Okay. Speaking of lessons and blessings, we're going to have story time because you brought up something, and I just want to talk about that time that you did that past life regression on me.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Egypt. The detail that I experienced, you were just asking me these more basic questions, and everything I said, you brought up a more specific question to answer whatever I was going through, and you just really tailored it to the vision that I was having at that point. And it was so incredible because I remember you were asking me, like, who was I? I was a boy. Obviously, I was a man in this lifetime. And there was a camel next to me, and I could actually identify who the souls were that were with me at that time, and they were actually with me in this current lifetime. So I have this repeating pattern of always reincarnating with these same souls because we're comfortable with each other. And you asked where we were, and I was like, we're in the desert, but there's this river. And I described this place in such detail and how close the walls were to the reeds and the river and kind of the scenery. And then you asked, do you know the name of this place? And I just hauled off and said, Thebes. And we were like, okay, that's oddly specific. And you asked who the pharaoh was and what time and whatever. And you know, I mean, it was past the time of the pharaohs. It was more recent than that, but it still wasn't now. I mean, maybe a 1,000 years ago. I don't remember exactly what I had said in that. But then we Googled what Thebes looks like. To a T, I described what the city of Thebes looked like a couple hundred years ago. I mean, it was insane how accurate this was, and just bringing me into that vision with just those few questions that you asked. It was incredible. Past life regression is incredible, if not for entertainment value, if anything.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's
so much fun.
It's so much fun.
But learn your lessons and count your blessings if you do it, because that's how it's really going to pay off in the end, right?
That's absolutely right.
All right. So if you enjoyed what we talked about here today and you want to learn more about past lives or anything else in general, or if you want a reading from us, you can visit our websites. But hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.